You'll know if you should buy Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion in the next 49 seconds. Here's your TLDR. Daemon X Machina, subtitle mouthful, nails the mech-tinkering power fantasy and delivers crunchy, high-speed fights with a great soundtrack. The pivot to an open world is the big swing from the previous entry, and some will find it freeing, others will find it empty and repetitive. Weebs will enjoy the exposition-heavy story of anime tropes, otherwise you may find yourself tuning out as you clear the campaign to unlock a healthy set of endgame activities a la Monster Hunter. Combat is solid, if a bit janky, and the camera boss can make routine appearances, especially with larger monsters. Technical hiccups in performance and co-op hit every platform, these are most obvious on Switch 2, and at a $70 price tag, the AA wearing AAA clothes vibe is hard to ignore. Pick this up now if you're a mech head who loves build, craft, and co-op. Otherwise, wait for a discount and see if patches land that tidy up the rough spots. If all you wanted was that TLDR, thanks for sticking around. But before you go, hit the YouTube buttons though, and drop a comment so the robots on the back end know that this is a helpful video and suggest it to more people. If you want a more in-depth breakdown, stick around. Oh, and if you're new here, hi, I'm Squid. I cover mostly action shooter titles, and the rule here is maximum meaningful info with minimum reaction faces. Daemon X Machina Unnecessary: released September 5th, 2025 on all your platforms at $70 US or your regional equivalent. Deluxe tiers and cosmetic DLC exist, though it's nothing I would call explicitly pay to win. So the core question here today is, does the open world shift make sense with the series, or does it sand down what made the first one sing? The 2019 original was tight mission-based, had in and out of sorties with a cel-shaded living manga look. Titanic Scion blows the doors off that formula. It's big, contiguous, semi-open world zones, contracts you pick up in the hub, as well as some free-roaming experiences, all while paired with build-driven progression. You can expect faster traversal, larger arenas, and a heavier lean on co-op if you want it. Yeah, under the hood, it's UE5, and yes, we'll talk about that later. But overall, if your happy place is tearing a mech apart on the bench to chase a plus 2% boost efficiency, well, you're already in the target audience. So as for the core gameplay loop, read as, why it's fun when it's fun. Pick up bounties, patrols, rescue jobs, and boss hunts from the hub, and there's opportunity for serendipity hits and secret exploration while roaming. Things like secret bosses, side content, dungeons, etc. Think monster board meets mercenary radio. Combat is fast, vertical, and readable. Most encounters open at range and tend to collapse into mid-air scrums. Damage clarity is decent. Stagger windows are there if you build for them. Overall, it's effective if a bit janky. During my playthrough, I found a glass cannon lightweight build that explodinated all the things, so long as I didn't get hit. But this did tend to become a bit repetitive, if effective, over time. If you're a meta chaser, you may find the combat dull once sorting out what works best for you. Otherwise, bouncing from build to build can extend variety and novelty. Targeting and lock reliability is fine. The camera will still fight you from time to time, as I said, especially on the larger enemies, as the camera control and lock-on swap are both managed by the right stick, so occasionally if you're trying to move from the head over to a knee or a shoulder or arm or whatnot, you're also going to be whipping your camera around, and that can be kind of infuriating. Melee builds are surprisingly viable overall here. With the right mech parts and attachments, gap closing and clash windows feel spicy, albeit a little bit overpowered and repetitive if you build it right, and your dodge rolls are on point. Now, in terms of bosses, the best fights blend pattern recognition with build checks. Your kit matters just as much as your reads. A couple of late-game bosses are, however, a little bit spiky for lower mobility frames, and at times I found myself a bit bored with chipping away at health bars once I got the boss reads down. For build crafting, your arsenal, mech, power suit, you choose your verbiage here, is the star. Every part of your build is going to address things like shooting and brawling performance, stamina, and overall weight are going to directly impact how nimble or not you are, and you're always balancing memory cost of your specific setup versus weight and things like that. Synergy matters here. You can lean into melee burst builds, missile boats, or sustained DPS shooters. Is it as deep as something like AC6? Is it solid? Yeah. So for character progression, the gear treadmill is generous. Blue and purple drops come in at a healthy clip as you clear the story. This then expands into late game as you transition into more of a Monster Hunter model. Skill fusion and upgrade systems deepen your overall stats and character skills without drowning you in currencies. And the limited space to absorb genetic codes from fallen foes that later unlock those skills can make marathon deployments a little bit deeper in terms of decision-making and prioritization. It's nice. There is drop-in and out online co-op. Games like this, in my opinion, are almost always better with friends to fill the slow parts, and in this case, they can help with things like boss pacing, which does tend to drag at times. There is cross-platform matchmaking, though at the time of this record, having online features enabled dramatically increases your load times. I went from loading from the elevator to 6 to 7 seconds to 54 seconds, and that's a lot. Reportedly, there's a patch in the works to address this. We'll see how impactful that winds up being. So let's talk about part of the reason the open world here is so divisive. The upside here is you get the freedom to test builds between big fights. You run into roaming immortals, material nodes, and outposts, and side content that you can turn to your advantage and explore at your whim. Traversal is frictionless enough that long legs tend to not feel like chores. And if you like the contrast of quiet roaming to loud set pieces, the structure is pretty great. The downside here is that the world often feels sparse. Side jobs repeat sooner than they should, and several zones blur together visually. Yeah, you could make the argument that if all of these are contiguous areas, like geographically and geologically, it would make sense that they are similar. But, are we really here for an accurate sim? If you love the original's bite-sized sorties and strong mission identity, this can read like scope over substance. And really, this is the fork in the road. Sandboxers and tinkerers lean yes, mission purists lean no. Hey, you into this kind of breakdown so far? You know what to do. So for stories, characters, and overall vibe here, it's better framed than the first. It is still anime melodrama by way of metal album liner notes. And as I said in the TLDR, weebs will be right at home. Others may find themselves mashing the skip cutscene button, which infuriatingly only lets you skip until the next cut in the cutscene. The cast is larger, the English voiceover is uneven, and some characters may leave you wanting to do the bad guys' work for them. The music absolutely carries the whole affair. It's a metal and electronica blend that sells speed and scale and scope, and it's just epic. If the story's your main meal, music is a side dish. If the combat's your main meal, the soundtrack is the hot sauce that makes everything taste better. For art direction and visuals, the cel-shaded aesthetic remains striking at a glance. There's strong silhouette reads, and arsenal designs are poster-ready. Under the paint, though, you'll see flat textures, basic materials, and stiff NPC animations, especially out in the open world. It looks AA far more often than it wants to. Yes, the PS5 and PC can elevate the overall image quality and experience. The Switch 2 tends to trade sharpness for consistency. So thinking about performance and settings, here's a bit of a reality check across the platforms. Now, I played this on PC, so any of my commentary here about console is the result of me aggregating information from across the internet and doing a little bit of fact-checking. Please drop a comment if this mirrors your experience or if this is just another instance of the internet being comedically wrong. So on Switch 2, it leans towards a 30 FPS target. There is noticeable hitching when you're traversing zones and occasional long loads. Handheld tends to look and perform better than expected. Docked mode tends to run into frame pacing issues, particularly in busier hubs. On PS5, there's a 60 FPS target. It does still see some traversal hitching, but it's overall a much smoother experience. Now on PC, I would say the overall experience is mixed. My machine only had traversal stutter as you entered new areas, and was remarkably smooth in routine fights. This is your usual poor implementation of UE5 shaders and PSO caching. For me, this was consistently running at the 130 to 141 FPS range at 1440p with everything maxed out graphically, DLSS on quality, and G.SKILL on. Your mileage here will likely vary according to your own hardware. My specs are in the description if you want a ballpark comparison. I'm quite confident you could run this at higher than 140 FPS on high-end hardware. It's just that my display caps at 144, so I cap it at 3 less than that refresh rate. Graphical options are a bit limited, but healthy enough that if you run into performance issues, there's adequate options for tweaking. Now, as for the stuff that wears you down over time, there is a bit of repetition. Side content tends to repeat early, contracts blurs, scavenger hunts overstay their welcome at times. In terms of world density, there are big spaces, and there's not always enough to do in between anchors. For boss tuning, as I'd mentioned before, there are 2 or 3 damage spongy DPS spikes that punish low mobility or low DPS frames more than they test skill. For the story, there's adequate scaffolding to justify why you're doing the things you're doing, but there's overall not much meat, and as I said, unless you're a bit of a weeb, you may bounce off the story. Now for technicals, hitching and frame pacing does exist regardless of the platform you use, with Switch 2 suffering the most here. So for overall value and the Burrito index, your main path is going to be anywhere between the 10 to 16 hour range depending on difficulty and how much cutscene skipping you do. My playthrough cleared the campaign at just shy of 20 hours, but I did lean a bit more on the completionist side of things during the first 2/3 of that affair. Now, realizing I eventually needed to get this review out at a sensible amount of time from release, I did just beeline my way through the last third of the game. Now, including all of the side and post-game content, other reports range from 30 to 40 hours to 60 plus, if you clean the map, farm sets, and do a grip of co-op on bosses. And this does seem pretty reasonable based on my experience and anticipating just how much RNGesus generally dislikes me. So for the Burrito index, at 6.4 burritos, if you're here for buildcraft and co-op, the playtime to cost is decent. If you just want a polished linear campaign, the burritos might actually be the more dopamine per dollar. It really, make no mistake, this wears AA clothes with a premium price tag. Now, if you nodded along to I like tinkering with my mech more than I like dialogue, you already know which side you're on. So for final verdicts here, I would say it's a strong buy if you love mecha, you enjoy systems tinkering, and you plan to do a grip of co-op. If you can live with performance bumps and mid-budget presentation because the mech bay, combat, feel, and soundtrack are your meal, you're going to eat well. I would say it's a wait for discount if you want smoother performance and denser side content before jumping in. Yeah, a patch or two here, plus a sale makes this a much easier recommendation, and I imagine this is where most people are going to fall. It's a hard wish list or skip if you need mission-based pacing, a strong story, or butter-smooth performance. The things on offer here aren't going to convert you. So those are my thoughts on Daemon X Machina, Titanic Scion, but I'm curious about yours. What do you think about the shift of the quasi-open world? How's the combat feel, and does this live up to your mech tinkering expectations? Leave a comment. Let's chat about it. And if you want more reviews like this, clean, honest, zero fluff, hit the buttons. It helps more people dodge the rage bait garbage and find stuff that's hopefully actually useful. I've been BaldSquid. I'll see you next time.